You are still mine.
What happens when the coldest duke in London sees the woman he rejected and suddenly can't breathe? Why does his gaze lock on her like a vow he never broke, only buried? And when another man dares to touch her on the dance floor, why does the duke snap? Because tonight, under chandeliers and whispers sharp as glass, he doesn't ask, he takes. He pulls her into the shadows and growls, "You're still mine." But tell me, can you claim a woman who refuses to bow? What secret forced him to let her go? And who is hiding in the crowd, waiting to turn her beauty into ruin? Stay with me, because this ballroom is about to explode. If you love intense historical romance with scandal and obsession, subscribe now. Hit like, share this video with a friend who lives for drama, and comment, should Adeline forgive him or destroy him? The night did not begin with music. It began with the moment a crowded ballroom forgot how to breathe. A hush slid across the gilt and candlelight, subtle at first, then absolute, when Adeline Gray stepped into the room. Silk whispered at her ankles, a sound like a secret being told on purpose. The air carried rain trapped in velvet drapes, the cool bite of London fog clinging to collars and hairpins, and beneath it all the faintest trace of sandalwood, warm, steady, impossible to ignore. Heads turned. Smiles froze halfway into politeness. Even the most seasoned gossips paused, as if beauty could be an accusation. Adeline did not enter like a woman seeking approval. She entered like a verdict. Across the sea of satin and jewels stood Duke Roderick Ashcroft, the man London praised for having no tenderness left to exploit. He was still as carved stone, dark coat immaculate, posture a lesson in dominance. Around him, laughter softened. Conversations bent away as if instinctively making room for danger. Men respected him. Women watched him. Everyone feared the consequences of being noticed by him. And yet, when his gaze landed on Adeline, fear became something else. Not for her, for him. Because his eyes did not merely see her, they recognized her. The way a wound recognizes pressure, the way hunger recognizes scent. A single heartbeat passed where his face remained cold perfection, and then the mask tightened, too tightly, betraying the strain beneath it. A gentleman approached Adeline with the bright confidence of a man who believed the world would reward him for trying. He offered a hand, a smile, a line meant to charm. Adeline accepted with a graceful incline of her chin, indomitable even in courtesy, and allowed herself to be guided toward the dance as though the room belonged to her. The orchestra swelled, the floor filled, and the moment another man's palm settled at Adeline's waist, something in the Duke's composure snapped, silent, swift, catastrophic. Roderick moved. He crossed the room with the inevitability of a storm, cutting through dancers and laughter as if etiquette were merely paper he could tear. Whispers rushed ahead of him, startled and delighted. Someone tried to laugh it off, tried to keep the evening safe inside its rules, but rules did not survive Ashcroft when he chose to break them. He reached Adeline and did not ask permission. His hand closed around her wrist, firm, possessive, heated beneath the glove's cool surface, and he pulled her away from her partner as if reclaiming stolen property. The gentleman's smile faltered. The dancers stumbled apart. The music stuttered, then kept playing too brightly, like a lie. Adeline did not stumble. She turned with the pull, balanced as a blade, and lifted her gaze to meet Roderick's. There was no fear in her expression, only challenge, clean, steady, almost luminous. "Release me," she said, softly enough to make it worse. Roderick leaned closer, his voice dropping into something rougher than the ballroom deserved. "You shouldn't be here." "I go where I please, Your Grace," Adeline replied, her tone velvet over steel. "London is not your estate." His grip tightened by a fraction, as if his body remembered a claim his pride refused to confess. "You walk in wearing that," he murmured, anger disguised as accusation, "and expect me to pretend you are nothing." Adeline's smile sharpened. "You made me nothing the day you discarded me." A flicker crossed his face, heat beneath ice, gone almost instantly. I did what I had to do. No, Adeline said, calm as a closing door. You did what was easiest for you. The room leaned in, hungry. Fans fluttered like nervous wings. A careless voice, too loud with curiosity, pierced the tension. Did she say, discarded? Was she his? Adeline lifted her chin higher, refusing the shame they offered her. She looked at Roderick as if daring him to either deny her or destroy himself. Then his restraint broke, just enough. You're still mine, he growled, loud enough for the scandal to become permanent. Silence struck like a slap. Adeline's laughter was quiet, almost tender, and far more dangerous than tears. Then tell me, she whispered, eyes bright with refusal. Why did you let me go? London morning never arrived cleanly. It seeped in, grey and damp, through lace curtains and carriage smoke, through the slow dripping of last night's rain from iron rails. The streets smelled of wet stone and coal ash, of horses and fresh mud, and the fog clung to everything like a rumour that refused to die. Adeline Gray moved through it with her collar high and her spine higher. She was not poor, but she was not sheltered by legend either. Her house was respectable, well kept, quiet, disciplined. Yet it did not roar with ancestral power. It did not intimidate visitors into manners. It required Adeline to do that work herself, with nothing but composure and a gaze that did not flinch. Letters waited for her each day like elegant threats. Invitations written in polite script that could turn, with one missing flourish, into exclusion. Notes from friends who cared but feared association. Requests that disguised themselves as concern while measuring her usefulness. Society had 1,000 ways to touch a woman without leaving fingerprints. Adeline learned to read meaning in paper. A heavier stock meant wealth and confidence. A hurried hand meant desperation. A signature curved too proudly meant someone thought her easy prey. She answered them all with the same calm precision, never pleading, never explaining, never offering anyone the satisfaction of seeing her scramble. Yet there were names that turned ink into ice. Ashcroft. She kept no portraits of him, no mementos. She refused that kind of worship. But memory did not require objects. It lived in her senses. How sandalwood could suddenly feel like a hand closing around her wrist. How the sound of silk could become the echo of a ballroom falling silent. How a single word, spoken with cold authority, could return her to the night she had been dismissed as if her devotion were a stain. The Duke of Ashcroft lived in a different London. His world began behind wrought iron and ended wherever his influence decided it should. His title was older than some streets. His fortune did not merely buy comfort, it bought outcomes. Men adjusted their opinions to suit him. Women measured their daughters against his notice. Even those who disliked him did so carefully, as if hatred itself required permission. In clubs scented with brandy and tobacco, they spoke of him the way one spoke of winter, inevitable, dangerous, admired from a distance. The cold Duke, the man who never raised his voice, because the city leaned in to catch his quiet words. The man who could ruin a family with a sentence and never wrinkle his gloves. He did not attend mornings the way others did. He attended obligations. He attended power. And yet, on the day Adeline received her invitation to the grandest ball of the season, it was not the paper that unsettled her. It was the seal, black wax, a crest pressed deep, decisive. Ashcroft, her fingers paused above it. Still, as if her body had recognized the threat before her mind could name it. She broke the seal anyway. She had promised herself long ago that she would never be the woman who trembled in private and smiled in public. If the past wanted her attention, it would have to earn it. The card inside was formal, almost impersonal, as if written by someone who believed courtesy could erase history. It offered no apology, no explanation, only an address, a time, and the quiet assumption that she would obey. Adeline read it once, then again. Outside, London breathed cold into the window panes. Inside, Her pulse remained steady. She set the card down as if it were harmless, then walked to the mirror and looked at her own reflection the way an adversary might, assessing, deciding. If Ashcroft had invited her into his storm, then Ashcroft would learn something he had forgotten. She did not exist to be dismissed. The first time Adeline saw him again in daylight, it was not in a ballroom's forgiving glow, but in the harsh honesty of afternoon. The sky hung low and colourless, and the air tasted of rain that hadn't yet decided whether to fall. Carriages passed with a wet hiss over cobblestone. Somewhere nearby, a church bell counted the hour with indifferent certainty. Roderick Ashcroft stood at the edge of a private garden behind a townhouse that belonged to someone important enough to lend him silence. He did not wait like other men. He simply existed, unmoving, as though the world should arrange itself around his patience. The cold in him was not a mood, it was a practiced discipline, worn so long it had become identity. Adeline approached without hesitation, her steps measured, her hands steady. She felt his gaze before she met it, heavy, direct, claiming. The memory of that gaze had haunted her for years, not because it had been kind, but because it had been absolute. "So," he said at last, voice quiet as a threat, "you intend to go?" Adeline's mouth curved slightly. "If you invited me, it would be rude to disappoint you." His eyes narrowed, as if he disliked her control more than her presence. "You know what that house will do to you." "I know what London does," she corrected. "It did it before. It will do it again, with or without your permission." A flicker passed over his face, too quick to be called emotion, too sharp to be nothing. "You are not safe near me." Adeline's gaze held his without blinking. "And whose fault is that?" Roderick's jaw tightened, the line of his restraint sharpening. "You want answers," he said. "You want explanations that will soothe your pride." "I want truth," Adeline replied. "Pride is what you use to excuse cruelty." He stepped closer, closing distance the way a man used to dominance closed doors, calmly, inevitably. The faint scent of leather and rain clung to him, clean and severe. "Careful," he murmured. "You always mistake defiance for strength." Adeline did not retreat. She lifted her chin, letting her words land precisely where they would hurt. "No, Your Grace, I mistake your control for courage, and I am no longer willing to be impressed." For a moment, silence stretched between them, thin as thread, pulled too tight. The wind shifted, bringing a colder breath through the garden, stirring leaves with a sound like whispered judgment. Roderick's gaze dropped, briefly, to her lips, then rose again, as though angry at himself for noticing. "You came back," he said, and there was accusation in it, but also something worse, need hidden beneath contempt. "I never left," Adeline answered softly. "You just pushed me out of your sight and called it mercy." Roderick's hand lifted as if to take her wrist again, an instinct, a claim, a habit of ownership, then stopped midair. His fingers curled, empty. "You don't understand what you're provoking." Adeline's smile sharpened into a blade. "Then explain it, out loud. Say why you ended it. Say why you made me read your silence as disgust." His eyes hardened. "You think I owe you a confession?" "I think," Adeline said, voice low and steady, "that if you could throw me away once, you can survive the sound of your own reasons." He leaned closer, close enough that her breath warmed the cold edge of his restraint. "And if I tell you," he murmured, "will you obey?" Adeline's eyes glittered, unbroken. "If you tell me," she whispered back, "you'll finally stop pretending you're made of ice." A soft laugh drifted from behind them, feminine, polished, perfectly timed. "Your Grace," a woman's voice said, sweet as sugared wine. "There you are, and how charming, to find you with Miss Grey." Lady Selwyn's presence arrived like perfume laid over something rotten, floral sweetness masking a sharper truth. She moved with the confidence of a woman who had never been denied a room, never been refused an outcome. Her smile was gentle enough to be called kind, and her eyes were bright, with the precise curiosity of someone inspecting a bruise to see how deep it goes. "Miss Grey," she said, lingering on the name as if it belonged to her tongue. "How fortunate. London has missed its most interesting story." Adeline offered a controlled inclination of her head. "Lady Selwyn," Roderick's voice cut through with quiet authority. "This is not your concern." Lady Selwyn's laugh was light, effortless. "Everything is my concern when the Duke of Ashcroft forgets himself." Her gaze drifted to Adeline's face, then to the space between Adeline and Roderick, as if measuring the distance and imagining how to close it with a single push. "I do hope you'll attend tonight. The season requires spectacle to survive." Adeline's eyes stayed steady. "The season survives on cruelty. And yet you're still here," Selwyn replied, sweetly. "How admirable." The evening came wrapped in candlelight and damp velvet. Rain had fallen earlier, leaving the city smelling of stone washed clean and iron made sharper. Inside the ballroom, the warmth was rehearsed, music bright, laughter polished, crystal chiming like fragile promises. Adeline entered with her spine straight and her expression calm, as if she had not walked into a mouth waiting to bite. Whispers followed her immediately, flowing from fan to fan, from shoulder to shoulder. She did not lower her gaze. If they wanted to stare, they could choke on the sight of her standing unbroken. Roderick appeared across the room like a shadow, deciding to become solid. He watched her with a stillness that drew attention, even before anyone understood why. His mask was intact, his posture impeccable, but the air around him felt strained, like restraint stretched thin. Lady Selwyn moved through the crowd as if she owned its hunger. She spoke to matrons, to gentlemen, to girls too young to understand the power of a ruined name. Each smile she offered was a small spark, and soon the room was full of quiet fire. Then came the toast. A gentleman lifted his glass and called for attention, with the easy cheer of someone certain he would not be the one harmed. Laughter softened. The orchestra lowered. The circle of guests tightened, drawn by instinct toward the center of an impending downfall. "To the triumphs of the season," the gentleman said, voice bright, "to the enduring glory of our nobility, and to, how shall I put it, unexpected reunions." The word reunion landed like a hand on Adeline's throat. Lady Selwyn's voice joined in, perfectly timed, perfectly gentle. "Some reunions," she murmured, "are simply destiny correcting itself." Faces turned, fans fluttered. Someone's sharp intake of breath was loud in the hush. Adeline lifted her glass without trembling, meeting the crowd with the calm of a woman who refused to be scripted. "If London requires entertainment," she said softly, "it may find it elsewhere." A few laughs, nervous, delighted, answered her, but the hunger remained. Lady Selwyn stepped closer, her smile unchanged. In her gloved hand she held a folded card, sealed in black wax so dark it looked like wet ink. The crest pressed into it was unmistakable. Ashcroft. Adeline's stomach tightened, not with fear, but with the sudden, cold clarity of a trap closing. She had never received anything from Roderick that carried a seal after the night he ended everything. Not a letter, not a word, not even a rumor of regret. Lady Selwyn's eyes gleamed. "I found this among old correspondences," she whispered, loud enough for nearby ears to catch. "How curious what men write when they believe a woman will quietly accept her place." Roderick's hand moved fast, too fast for a man who claimed indifference, intercepting the card before it could touch Adeline's fingers, and the room held its breath, waiting to see whether the Duke would protect her or destroy her all over again. Roderick did not let the card fall. He held it between two fingers as if the wax could burn through skin, as if the crest pressed into it was suddenly an accusation instead of a crown. The silence around them thickened, fed by 100 unsaid questions, until even the music felt like a lie struggling to continue. "Not here," he said, the words clipped and cold, yet edged with something restless beneath. Adeline's gaze did not flicker. "You mean not where they can watch you choose?" she murmured, His eyes sharpened, but he turned without answering, cutting a path through the crowd with the same authority that had always made doors open and voices soften. Adeline followed, not because he led, but because she refused to let Lady Selwyn narrate her life with borrowed ink. They passed into a quieter corridor, where the air cooled and smelled faintly of old polish and extinguished candles. The noise of the ballroom dimmed into a distant pulse, like a heartbeat behind walls. Roderick stopped before a door and opened it with impatient precision, ushering her inside with a hand that hovered near her back without touching, as if touch were both temptation and fault. The room beyond was a library. Shadowed shelves rose like witnesses. A fire had burned earlier, leaving a thin warmth and the bitter sweetness of ash lingering in the air. Rain tapped softly against the window panes, steady and patient, as though the night had all the time in the world to listen. Roderick closed the door. Adeline turned to face him, her posture unbroken. "Now," she said. He set the sealed card on a table as if placing evidence before a judge. For a moment he stared at it, unmoving, as though breaking the wax might also break whatever control he still possessed. Then his hand came down, firm, and the seal cracked with a small, intimate snap. Adeline's chest tightened, not from fear, but from the weight of years pressing forward all at once. "Read it," she demanded. Roderick unfolded the paper slowly. His eyes moved across the lines, and something changed in his face. Recognition, then disbelief, then a colder, more dangerous clarity. He did not speak immediately. The silence stretched, filled with rain and ash, and the faint warmth that made the room feel too private for hatred. "Well?" Adeline's voice cut through. "Is it yours?" "The seal is mine," he said, voice low. "The handwriting is not." Relief flared inside her like a match, followed instantly by rage hot enough to scorch it. "Then someone dressed cruelty in your name," she said, each word controlled and sharp. "And you let me believe it for years." Roderick's jaw tightened. "I didn't know," he said, and the confession sounded like a restraint snapping. "Not then." Adeline stepped closer, eyes bright, merciless. "You ended our engagement. You vanished. You watched London tear me apart and did nothing." His gaze lifted to hers, and for the first time the cold Duke looked almost stripped. "I did what I could," he said, and beneath the ice there was something raw, almost furious, not at her, but at himself. "If I had fought it publicly, if I had kept you close, they would have used you." "They," Adeline echoed, refusing to soften. "Who are they?" Roderick's hand clenched once at his side. "People who believe Ashcroft blood owes them obedience," he said, voice turning rough. "People who would have hurt you to punish me." Adeline's smile was bitter. "So you hurt me first." The words landed, and his composure wavered. Only a fraction, but enough to reveal the man behind the title. For a heartbeat, he looked as if he might reach for her, not to claim, but to hold. Then he stopped himself, as though afraid his own hands were unworthy. "You were never meant to be collateral," he said quietly. "I tried to send you away from the danger." "And you thought I would rather be abandoned than trusted," Adeline replied. "You thought I would rather bleed alone than stand beside you." Roderick's eyes darkened, and his voice dropped into something almost hoarse. "I thought I could survive losing you," he admitted. "I was wrong." A faint sound came from the corridor, soft fabric brushing wood, a pause that felt deliberate. Adeline's spine tightened. Roderick's gaze snapped to the door, hard as steel. Then the handle turned, slowly, and it did not open. The handle turned again, a slow insistence, and the lock answered with a soft click that made Adeline's skin tighten. Roderick crossed the room in 2 strides and tested the door. It held. Whoever stood outside did not knock, did not speak, only lingered long enough to make the message unmistakable, then retreated with the unhurried grace of someone who believed the house belonged to her. Adeline's eyes stayed on Roderick. "So this is your world," she said, her voice level. "Doors that close when it suits someone. Keys that choose sides. Roderick's gaze was sharp, predatory, fixed on the wood as if he could see through it. "Not my doing," he said, and there was steel in the words. "Not tonight." "Convenient," Adeline murmured, the syllable carrying years of swallowed shame. Everything terrible that happened to me was always not yours. Roderick turned back, and the mask of ice was intact again. Only the eyes betrayed him, dark with fury that had nowhere decent to go. "Read the bottom," he said, pushing the unfolded letter toward her. The signature. Adeline's gloved fingers took the paper. The ink had aged, but the cruelty remained fresh, each phrase a carefully sharpened blade. She forced herself to look past the insults, past the manufactured contempt, down to the flourish meant to be Ashcroft. It wasn't. The curve at the end was too elegant, too theatrical, an unnecessary ornament, as if the writer could not resist leaving a hint of herself behind. Adeline's breath caught, not from weakness, but from recognition. The same flourish appeared on Lady Selwyn's calling cards, on the little notes passed at teas, on the delicate scripts that hid barbs beneath compliments. Her eyes lifted slowly. "Selwyn," she said. Roderick's jaw tightened, his control going taut. "Yes." Adeline's grip on the letter steadied, though something inside her shook with a cold, lethal clarity. "You said you didn't know," she whispered. "But you knew someone had access to your seal. You knew someone could reach into your household and pull strings." "I knew my uncle kept company with vultures," Roderick said, and the name uncle sounded like a curse. "I didn't know which one had the nerve to wear my crest." "Your uncle," Adeline repeated, tasting the shape of it. The same man who was so concerned with Ashcroft blood and obedience. Roderick's eyes flickered, a fraction of pain slipping through. "He believed my marriage was a transaction," he admitted. "A tool. He believed affection made a duke weak. And Lady Selwyn," Adeline said, voice sharpening, "believes the same." Roderick's hand came down on the table, not hard enough to break it, only hard enough to reveal how close he was to losing control. "She wants my name," he said, "my influence, the certainty of being untouchable." Adeline's smile was thin, dangerous. "So she made me the sacrifice. She made sure I left you hating myself." "She made sure you left," Roderick corrected, the words rough. "And she made sure you never came back to claim what was yours." Adeline's gaze did not soften. "What was mine was never you," she said. "It was my own dignity, and she stole it with your silence." A faint laugh slid under the door, then, soft as silk drawn over a blade. "Such passion," Lady Selwyn's voice murmured, intimate through the wood. "How touching to hear you two finally speak the truth." Roderick's eyes went murderous. "Open the door," he said. "Oh, I will," Selwyn replied, sweetness dripping with satisfaction. "But first, do you know what the room is saying? They're saying the Duke hid his former bride in a library. They're saying she begged. They're saying he rejected her again." Adeline's pulse stayed steady. Her voice cut through the threat like a knife through ribbon. "Let them say it," she called calmly, "and then let them watch you prove it false." Silence for a beat. Then the key turned, slow, deliberate, like a promise being unwrapped. The door opened with a softness that felt obscene, as if the house itself wished to pretend nothing violent was happening. Lady Selwyn stood in the threshold with her ring of keys resting in her gloved hand like a toy. Her smile was composed, her eyes bright with a patience that belonged to someone confident the ending was already written. "There," she said gently. "Freedom. Isn't it remarkable how easily it's granted when one knows the correct locks?" Roderick moved first, stepping into the corridor with the stillness of contained fury. "You will retract what you've begun," he said, voice low. Lady Selwyn's lashes lowered, then lifted. "Retract?" she echoed, amused. "My dear Duke, the room has already tasted it. London does not spit out what it enjoys." Adeline emerged behind him without hesitation, her expression calm and unreadable, as though scandal were weather and she had long ago learned to walk through storms. She met Selwyn's gaze and held it, unblinking. "You wanted me humiliated," she said softly. "And you wanted him watching." Selwyn's smile warmed. "I wanted clarity," she replied. "A duke cannot be allowed to drift. Your return was disruptive." Roderick's hand flexed at his side, as if resisting an older instinct. "You used my seal," he said. "I used what your uncle permitted," Selwyn answered, and for a heartbeat, the sweetness in her tone sharpened. "He understood what you refused to accept. Affection is leverage. A woman at your side becomes a handle for your enemies." Adeline's voice did not rise. "So you made me the handle," she said, "and you pulled until I broke." Selwyn stepped aside, letting the corridor open toward the ballroom. Music drifted closer, bright and indifferent. "Come," she murmured. "They're waiting." They returned to the glittering heat of the crowd, where laughter clung to people like perfume and curiosity bloomed like rot beneath silk. As Adeline stepped into view, whispers flared instantly. Faster now, crueler, sharpened by the time she'd been missing. Eyes traveled over her as if searching for tears, for trembling, for any sign that she had begged behind a closed door. They found none. A gentleman approached with practiced boldness, bowing too deeply, voice just loud enough to be overheard. "Miss Grey, may I claim the next dance?" It was not a question. It was a trap dressed as courtesy, designed to force her into submission either way. Adeline studied him for a brief, cool moment, then offered her hand with serene precision. "Of course." Roderick's gaze snapped to her fingers touching another man's. The ice in his face held, but the fracture ran deeper now, pulsing beneath his skin. "No," he said. The single syllable fell heavy, silencing nearby conversation. The gentleman's smile stiffened. Adeline turned her head toward Roderick, eyes bright with challenge. "You do not decide what I do," she murmured. Roderick leaned in, his voice meant for her alone, rough with restraint. "He is bait." "And you," Adeline replied, equally low, "are not my keeper." Lady Selwyn watched from a perfect distance, her satisfaction barely hidden. The room leaned closer, hungry for the moment when Adeline would be shamed, or when the Duke would finally admit what he could no longer conceal. Roderick's hand closed around Adeline's wrist again, firm, possessive, and the whispers sharpened into a collective intake of breath. Adeline did not pull away. She lifted her chin and spoke softly, with a calm that threatened ruin. "Let go," she said, "or claim me in front of them and suffer the consequences of your own words." Roderick's eyes darkened. For a heartbeat, his control trembled, then turned into something more dangerous. Decision edged with hunger. His hand slid from her wrist to her waist, pulling her closer with undeniable certainty, and the room's silence widened like a wound. The ballroom did not feel like a celebration anymore. It felt like a courtroom disguised in lace and candlelight, where verdicts were delivered with smiles and ruined names were applauded behind fans. Roderick's hand at Adeline's waist was an unmistakable claim, and the room answered it with a collective, greedy silence. For one reckless breath, it seemed the world might tilt in her favor, because the cold Duke had stepped too far into fire to pretend he wasn't burning. Then Lady Selwyn moved. She did not rush. She did not raise her voice. She simply stepped into the attention like a woman born to be believed, her expression gentle with concern, her tone honeyed enough to sound kind even as it sharpened into cruelty. "Forgive me," she said, addressing the nearest circle of matrons and gentlemen, "but I cannot watch in silence, not when a man's honor is being tested so publicly." A soft ripple of murmurs followed, eager and approving. Honor was always more valuable than truth, especially when truth belonged to a woman. Selwyn's gaze slid to Adeline with the faintest pity. "Miss Grey has suffered," she continued, "and I empathize, but desperation can make even the most elegant lady reckless." Adeline's pulse stayed steady, though something cold spread through her chest. "Choose your next words carefully," she said, quiet but clear. Selwyn smiled as if she'd been offered a compliment. "I will," she promised, "because I have evidence." A footman appeared as if summoned by fate, carrying a small tray. On it lay a folded scrap of paper, sealed and initialed, an imitation of propriety. Selwyn lifted it delicately between two fingers. "A note," she said, "delivered to me earlier this evening. It begged for an audience. It spoke of a private meeting. It implied arrangements." The room inhaled. Adeline's skin went cold, not with fear, but with recognition of the game. A forged note, a planted stain, a story that would spread faster than any denial. "That is not mine," Adeline said, voice like steel. Selwyn's eyes softened, cruelly. "Of course you would say that." Roderick's arm tightened around Adeline's waist, and the air around him turned sharp with contained violence. "Enough," he said. But Selwyn was already turning the blade. "Your Grace," she murmured, "you cannot possibly intend to reward this. If you allow her to cling to you, every ambitious woman in London will learn the same lesson." Adeline's gaze lifted to Roderick, daring him to speak, daring him to choose truth over reputation. For a heartbeat, his eyes held hers, dark, stormed, torn. Then his face went cold again, the mask slamming back into place with ruthless precision. He released her, not gently, not cruelly, simply with finality, as if removing his touch was the only way to stop a greater disaster. The sudden absence of him felt louder than any music. Roderick turned to the crowd, voice calm enough to be believed. "Lady Selwyn is correct," he said, each word a measured cut. "There will be no misunderstanding. Miss Grey and I share no bond. Nothing that happened tonight should be taken as permission." A shocked murmur surged, half satisfaction, half scandalous delight. Adeline's breath did not hitch. Her eyes did not water. But the humiliation rose around her like fog, thick and eager, swallowing her name in whispers. She looked at him, really looked, and spoke so softly only he would hear. "You chose again." Then she turned and walked away through the noise, through the silk and laughter, through the wet-scented air that suddenly felt too cold to breathe. While behind her, the Duke of Ashcroft stood perfectly still, like a man who had just sentenced himself to a lifetime of regret. London at midnight wore a different face, less polished, more honest. The laughter behind closed doors thinned into murmurs, and the rain returned with patience, tapping iron rails and window panes as if counting sins. Outside the ballroom, the air tasted of wet stone and pride cooling into shame. Adeline walked as though the corridor could not touch her. Her steps were steady, her head high, her pulse disciplined. But the words followed anyway, slipping through cracks in walls, curling around her like fog. Desperate, reckless, clinging. She did not run. Running would have fed them. She moved with the quiet dignity of a woman who refused to be chased out of her own life. Behind her, the Duke of Ashcroft remained in the ballroom for only long enough to keep his lie standing. Then he left with the same calm the world expected from him, the same cold control, until he was beyond the nearest circle of eyes. Only then did the fracture show. Roderick's breathing was measured, but it felt wrong in his chest, as if the air refused to settle. The moment Adeline's back had turned, the weight of what he'd done had crashed into him with brutal clarity. He had said the words Lady Selwyn needed. He had given London permission to devour the one woman who never deserved its teeth. He found Selwyn near a quiet alcove, smiling as if the night were a triumph. "Your Grace," she purred. "You handled that beautifully." Roderick's voice did not rise. It did not need to. "Where is she?" he asked. Selwyn's eyes glittered. "Gone, I imagine. Wounded pride often travels quickly." Roderick stepped closer, and the air around him turned lethal. "You forged her note," he said. "You staged the tray. You rehearsed the scandal." Selwyn's smile softened into mock pity. "I spared you," she whispered. "She was going to ruin you. She was going to make you weak in front of people who would use it." She was going to make me honest, Roderick replied, and the words came out like a confession torn from bone. Selwyn's expression tightened for the first time. Don't be dramatic. Roderick's gaze held hers, unmoving. You will tell them the truth, he said. Now. Selwyn's laugh was small, sharp. And if I refuse? The answer in his eyes was colder than winter. Then you will learn what it means, he said quietly. To make an enemy of Ashcroft. A door opened down the corridor. A servant rushed past, face pale, whispering to another. The words carried, fragmented, urgent. Miss Grey, the side steps, her cloak. Roderick moved before the sentence finished. He found Adeline near the carriage entrance where the night air seeped in like a warning. Rain misted the stones, and the fog pressed close, trying to claim her silhouette for itself. She stood with her cloak drawn tight, gloved hands still, as though she could hold herself together by force alone. Roderick stopped a few paces away. The distance between them felt like an entire ruined year. Adeline, he said, and for the first time that night, his voice was not a weapon. It was a plea he hated needing. She did not turn fully. If you've come to repeat your performance, she said, calm and cutting, save it for your audience. I came to end the lie, Roderick answered. Adeline's gaze slid to him, bright and merciless. You chose it. I chose wrong, he said. And the admission cracked something in him that had been frozen for too long. I thought I could protect you with distance. Then I protected my name with your humiliation. I won't do it again. Her laugh was quiet, bitter. And what will you do? Apologize in the dark, where it cost you nothing. Roderick stepped closer, rain-damp air clinging to his coat, his restraint hanging by a thread. No, he said. I'm going to do it where it costs me everything. Adeline's eyes narrowed. Meaning? Roderick turned his head toward the ballroom doors, toward the light, the music, the crowd still hungry for her downfall, and his voice dropped into something feral with resolve. Come back, he said. Let them watch me fall to my knees for the woman I never stopped wanting. Adeline stared at him as if he had spoken a foreign language. The idea of the Duke of Ashcroft kneeling for anyone sounded like myth, the kind of lie London invented to soothe itself when power grew too sharp. Yet in his eyes there was no performance, only a brutal, hungry sincerity that made her chest tighten with something she refused to name. You don't get to buy redemption with theatrics, she said softly. Roderick's jaw flexed. It won't be theatrics, he replied. It will be consequence. Rain misted the stones around them, cold and fine, threading the air with the scent of wet iron. From the ballroom, music drifted on, bright enough to be cruel, while inside those walls, her name was being shaped into a story she did not control. Adeline took a slow breath. If you do this, she warned, you do it for the truth, not for possession. Roderick's voice turned rough. The truth is that I have wanted you every day I pretended I didn't. Adeline's gaze did not soften. Want is not enough. It will have to become enough, he said. And then he extended his hand, not demanding, not dragging, simply offering it as if he finally understood she was not something to seize. Adeline placed her gloved fingers in his palm by choice, not surrender. They returned to the ballroom together, and the room reacted like an animal sensing blood. Conversations faltered, fans paused mid-flutter. Eyes snapped toward them with delighted shock, because the Duke had brought back the woman he had just denied, and denial was supposed to be final. Lady Selwyn stood near the centre, luminous with satisfaction that faltered the instant she saw Adeline beside him again. Her smile remained, but her eyes sharpened. Roderick did not slow. He stepped into the heart of the crowd as though walking onto a battlefield, Adeline at his side like a blade carried openly. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, yet it cut through the room's murmurs as if the chandeliers themselves had leaned closer. I lied, he said. A gasp rippled outward. Someone dropped a laugh too early and swallowed it. Roderick's gaze swept the faces around him, men who bargained with honor, women who collected ruin like embroidery. Then he looked at Lady Selwyn, and his calm, became something lethal. The note presented tonight was forged, he said. The scandal was staged. The letter that ended my engagement, written under my seal, was not mine. The room trembled with whispers. Lady Selwyn's smile tightened at the corners. "Your Grace," she began, voice sweet with disbelief. "You cannot expect—" "I can," Roderick interrupted, and the cold in his tone could have frozen wine in a glass. "Because I have witnesses. I have the hand that copied my seal. I have the messenger paid to deliver poison in my name. And I have the proof of the flourish Lady Selwyn cannot resist leaving behind when she thinks herself clever." Lady Selwyn's eyes flashed, and for a heartbeat her composure cracked. "This is absurd." "It's finished," Roderick said. He turned then, not to the crowd, but to Adeline. The ballroom held its breath, shocked into stillness by the sight of a duke looking at a woman, as if she were the only truth left. His hand tightened around hers, steady and unapologetic. "I wronged you," he said, voice roughened by something dangerously honest. "I chose my name over your dignity. I will never do it again." Adeline's chin lifted. "Do you understand what you're asking?" she murmured. "Not forgiveness, not a return, but a future you no longer control." Roderick's eyes darkened. "I'm not asking to control it," he said. "I'm asking to earn it." Lady Selwyn's breath hitched, her defeat arriving not with screaming, but with the slow closing of doors she could no longer unlock. The crowd, sensing the shift of power, turned on her with the same hunger it had offered Adeline, because London adored nothing more than a fallen queen. Adeline stepped forward into the silence and spoke with quiet authority. "You may keep your rumors," she said, "but you will not keep me beneath them." Roderick bowed his head, just slightly, the smallest surrender, more shocking than any shout. Then he raised Adeline's hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles with reverence that felt like a vow. And London, forced to witness it, understood. The cold duke had lost control, and the woman he tried to discard had returned not as a memory, but as his undoing.